Welcome to this Bitwig workshop. My name is Thavius Beck. I'm a longtime Bitwig certified trainer, very good friends with all the folks at Bitwig. And I am an advocate and longtime user of the DAW because it adds a lot to my creative workflow. So what I'd like to do in this particular workshop is to just start with some of the basics that make Bitwig unique, introduce some of the features from Bitwig 6 that also can help enhance your workflow. And I want to do this all over the course of trying to compose or create something that hopefully is interesting and ideally actually sounds good, right? So that's what we're going to do. Let me just ask this before I get started. I always like to get an idea. How many of you have any experience with Bitwig at all? Like any? Okay. So for those of you who didn't raise your hands, I'm assuming then you don't have much experience. Okay. Okay, all right, cool. So duly noted, I'll acknowledge that, all right. So I want to start from the basics, all right, because many people, you might be curious, you might have heard about Bitwig, but you may not understand, well, what's the big deal? What makes it so interesting? And it's not just one thing. There's many different layers of features that give you creative possibilities to enhance your workflow. So I don't want to overwhelm everybody. Let's just go step by step, all right? I have a blank project here, and I guess just to be clear, since we're talking about Bitwig from the beginning, it's a DAW, right? And with this DAW, we have a linear arranger, which is what I'm looking at here. There's a clip launcher alongside this linear arranger. And what's nice about this for people coming from other DAWs, let's say like Ableton Live, the clip launcher and your arranger, the tracks are aligned the same way. So this is nice. It just makes logical sense. If I press tab, this brings me to a mixer panel. What's nice about this mixer panel is that this can be configured in a lot of different ways. So I like to use my mixer panel as a full screen mixer. I like to have full height VU meters because it makes it feel like a mixer to me, all right? If I want though, I can change this so that this is actually more of a clip style launcher that would be more similar to someone coming from Ableton Live, right? What's nice about this though is I have a lot of different options for how the clips are displayed. I can make the clip height twice as big. So this is very nice, especially for performance sets. If you're setting further away from your computer, it makes it a lot easier to see what's being displayed. You can show device slots, which won't show up now because I don't have a device here. So let me just add one. This is an instrument track. And I think the easiest way to demonstrate one of the first features I want to talk about would be to create a simple drum beat. When I'm looking at either my arranger panel or mixer panel, there are sub panels on the bottom of the screen. And you can switch to these by using a single button shortcut. I want to load a device. Instruments and effects are called devices. I'm on an instrument track. If I press D, this brings up the device sub panel. And anytime you see a plus button in Bitwig, this will open up a pop-up browser that is context aware. So I'm on an instrument track. If I hit plus, the pop-up browser opens up. Also just notice, again, simple workflow stuff, the cursor is already in the search bar. So if I open up my pop-up browser and I'm looking for a specific instrument, I don't have to scroll, I can just start typing. And what I'm looking for, oh, actually, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I want the drum machine. We're gonna start with drums first, okay? But I don't wanna just load a blank drum machine, I'd like to load a preset. This is another great thing about Bitwig that I love that's just a small thing that adds up. I don't know what kind of preset I want to load yet. When I select a device, if there's presets available, there's a triangle here, and I can click, and here's a bunch of different presets. Now, what's cool is when I select one, but don't actually load it yet. Let's say, for instance, what was one that I was looking at before? The EDM kit. Okay. The sounds for the drum machine have been loaded. They're all right here. If I start playing notes, right? I can hear everything. I'm not hearing a pre-made loop. If I already have a MIDI pattern on this track, then this drum machine will play that pattern, but I haven't loaded this yet. I'm just previewing this before I actually load it, all right? So to me, this is just a small thing because instead of hearing a pre-made loop that's been like stretched at my project's tempo, I can preview different kits and actually hear them play the pattern that I've created. It's a pretty big deal, all right? Small thing, but significant. All right, let's load this kit. This kit is here. My track is armed, and that's it. Here is my device panel with my drum machine. So let's create something. I can do this in either view. I'm going to go back to the arranger panel just because most people, when you're working with Bitwig, you'll probably end up spending a lot of time over here. All right. Here's my EDM kit. I want to create a 1-bar note clip. And my goal is to show you how easy it is to take a very simple, repetitive idea and let it evolve over time, all right, by using some Bitwig specific features. When I look in this clip slot, I see that there's a circle, which means I could record into this in real time, which I could. There's also a plus button, which means I could preload a pre-made note clip. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to double click in the center, which allows me to create a blank 1-bar clip. All right. You can also do this with audio as well, and I'll explain the significance of that in a bit. So inside of my clip, I want to put some note events. And now I see at the bottom, we have a different panel. This is our editor panel, the note editor. All right. Now, since I have a drum machine here, I could either look at my piano roll, or I could click this button, which will now basically fold the clip, the note editor, so that I just see the things from my drum machine. I'm going to draw on a really simple pattern, a very intentionally repetitive pattern, and then we're going to make it a bit more generative and make it evolve. All right. Let's get a sense of the tempo here. Let's go a little bit slower here. 93 tends to be my default tempo. Don't ask me why. I'm a baby of the golden age of hip hop. Maybe that's it. Let me see. So let's just get some stuff going in here. Now I'm just using, I should also make this clear. Bitwig has numerous tools that you can use to interact with the note editor down here. Right now I'm just using the default tool, the pointer tool. And this is another tool that's, you could say, context aware. All right, depending on where your mouse is hovering, this tool will change to let you do different things. If I want to do very specific things in my note editor, I can switch to a different tool. And we'll talk about that in a second. After this, I want to create a bass line, and I want to make sure it fits into a certain key, and we'll discuss the tools a bit further once we get there. For now, let me just draw in some more notes and make my amazingly simple, awesome beat. So let's get some claps in here. There we go. And all right, something really, really basic. I want to draw some hi-hats in here as well. One way I could do this very easily, I'm going to switch to the spray can tool. This is a new tool in Bitwig 6. And in this case, I just want to draw 16th note hi-hats. So instead of clicking in every single 16th note square, I can just click and hold. And what's nice about the spray can, you see as I'm moving up and down, I'm still holding my mouse, right? So I can adjust velocity for these notes, moving up and down. And since I'm just holding onto my mouse, even if I'm in a different note lane, it's only going to draw the notes into the lane that I drew the first note in. So I don't create accidental patterns where the notes are falling falling into the wrong lane. Okay, this is very boring, super repetitive, and that's on purpose. Let's make this more interesting. All right, first thing I want to do is this. If I look on the left side of my screen, I see another panel. And if you don't happen to see this panel when you're working in Bitwig, you can just press I and it opens up the inspector panel. Anything you select, all the additional detail that you're probably looking for, likely you'll find in the inspector panel. All right. Now, depending on what I click on a track, the inspector panel shows me parameters for the instrument track. I click on a clip. These are inspector panel parameters for the clip. And inside of every clip, you have events. I want to see what I can do to these events. All right. The first event I probably want to impact is this 16th note hi-hat pattern, because I really don't want to hear 16th note hi-hats all the time. If I select one event, just by single clicking, now I can see it says note, and these are different things that I can do to this event. I'm going to select all of these by clicking on this note lane. And now let's talk about a feature known as operators. Operators have been in Bitwig for a little while. This is not a new Bitwig 6 feature, but some of the Bitwig 6 things I want to show will benefit from taking advantage of these operators. So there's 4 different things that we can do, 4 different operators. One other thing I'll point out really quickly is if you're new to Bitwig and you start using this, if you hover over any parameter, at the bottom of the screen where this gray bar is, it'll show you what it is and how to interact with that parameter. This is great for new users, all right? So the first thing I see here is chance, probability, and it looks like a little die. That's pretty straightforward. If I adjust this percentage, this is going to affect the probability for all my notes equally, which is fine, but that's not the Bitwig way to do stuff, all right? Since I've selected multiple notes, let me just make this clear. If I select one, here's the operator for probability. I see a percentage and that's it. If I select multiple events, now I see percentage and I see this little box with an arrow. This is one of my favorite little Bitwig things, okay? When you select multiple events, multiple things, some parameters will have a histogram, all right, where you can basically create controlled chaos, randomize these different values very easily. So right now, the probability for all the notes is 100%. I want to randomize this. So what I'm going to do is introduce a little bit of chaos. Maybe we'll scale this, change the mean value, maybe do a little bit more here. There we go. And now as I'm doing this, it may not be obvious on first glance, but chance is represented by a die, a single die. And if you look at each note has a different amount of dots representing the probability, right? The less amount of dots, the less chance that it'll play. Okay, let's play this now. We'll hear a change to the hi-hat pattern. It's still not going to be that fancy, but we have a lot more operators we can play with. Let's start from the top here. There we go. Okay, now notice as this is happening, we can see which notes are going to play and which notes aren't going to play, because the notes that will play are lighter, the ones that aren't going to play are darker. So it's a much more, it's a very visual way to see what probability is affecting. Okay. All right, so far so good, but this is still boring to me. All right, so the next operator here, this is for repetitions. We can make single notes. Basically, you can subdivide notes. All right. And typically, if I'm going to make a beat like this, and I've got these hi-hats, it might be fun to do some retrigs or ratchets or repetitions on the notes, right? Especially since some of these are only going to play every so often. Let's have some fun. This is pretty straightforward, all right? Let's say, okay, I think maybe this hi-hat before the second beat of the bar, maybe I could split this into two, right? Instead of a 16th note, let's make it a 30-second note. Let's make it two 30-second notes. I go over here. And right now, the repeat rate is off. I'm going to click and hold and just drag this up. And I've just split this one note into two. We can see this little line right here. If I want to, I can adjust the timing of the where the notes are split, which is nice. Maybe I don't want to subdivide this. Maybe I want to do something because I'm working in a style where I'm not quantizing my beats and I want the repetitions to be a bit wonky, right? I can use this line here to determine where does the note get split. And this can be really cool because let's say I do something just wild and random. Let's split this into 8, right? But I want this to basically kind of ramp up towards the end, something like this. I don't know that this is going to sound good, but the fact that I can do it and then instantly say, you know what, let's just go back to something simple. Why not try it, right? So, show this up. It's not terrible. I just tried to solo the track. It's the only track playing. Let's put one more of these repetitions here. I think maybe I'll do one here at the last 16th note of the 4th bar, and we'll just do 2. All right. You also have the ability to play around with the velocity of the repetition. So let's say like with this, I want this to ramp up towards the end, but get gradually quieter as you do so. If I want to see this visually represented, I can also show note expressions on the bottom. And now I can see, here's the single note that I've split into 8. I've skewed the timing towards the end of the note, and I've reduced the velocity. All right, so far so good. I still want to do more. If we look at some of the other operators, let's focus on these kicks. The kick pattern could probably use some adjustments. And honestly, you know what? I also want to do this. I like that kick better. Okay, cool. We go to the kick pattern. Instead of having these all play at the same time, I think there's a couple things that could be interesting. I'm going to jump to the last operator before I talk about the third one. This last one here, this is recurrence length. And this is great because I made a 1-bar pattern because I want to turn it into a 4-bar phrase, at least. With this recurrence, I can determine how often each note plays every time. What's the best way to phrase this? I can determine when the loop iterates, which note should play during each iteration of the loop. If this repeats 4 times, only play on the 1st and 4th iteration of the loop, okay? So, and you'll see this visually. It'll be pretty clear once I do this. Let's create a 4-bar phrase. I will go to this first kick. This one will always play, right? Every 4 bars, just play every 4 bars. Let's say for this kick, maybe only play on the, and I don't have to use the same number either, right? So one could be set to 4, one could be set to 7, and then you get this interesting thing where it never really truly repeats the same way, which honestly might be a bit more fun. So let's play with that. Let's say maybe every 5th iteration, this kick should only play the 2nd time. Let's say maybe every 3rd iteration, you'll play the 3rd time. And again, I'm just showing you, once you have these options, you can just be silly and just do stuff because Bitwig lets you, right? So let's go here and we'll do this every 4, all right? So this will play maybe the 2nd and 4th time. All right, what's the result? Okay, that's not bad. And again, since we're using different numbers for the loop iteration, this is not going to be a 4-bar phrase. So we'll get some surprises there. All right. So this kind of gives you an idea. Oh, I should also talk about this last one, and then I'll move on. Hello. All right. Since we have some different variations happening, these notes aren't always going to get triggered. This third operator will be very useful. This is condition. All right. I don't know if any of you are familiar with, let's say, like any electron gear. There's a lot of different hardware sequencers that allow you to use trig conditions. Only play this note if some other note has been triggered or something like that, right? So now you have that available to you in a DAW. Let's say that maybe this kick should only play if the previous one did. Actually, I guess it might be easier with the hi-hats. Let's do that. Let's say this hi-hat, if we look, these are all the different conditions that I can utilize, right? Only play on the first cycle. This could be good if I have a drum beat and there's like a crash cymbal and I only want it to play when I launch the clip, which in fact is not a bad use case. Look at that. There's not the cutest crash, but I won't have to hear it more than one time. Let's put this right here. And I only want you to play on the first cycle of the loop. Cool. And now it won't play again unless I re-trigger the clip. All right. So these are some basic ways that I could take a really simple idea and make it a bit more interesting. But obviously there's more that I could do. Let's talk about introducing something melodic. I'm going to create a new track. I see there's a plus button here. I click plus. It automatically takes me to different instruments, different devices. And for this, I'm going to use something called Polysynth. Polysynth would be a good starting point for anyone who isn't very familiar or maybe not that comfortable with synthesis. All right. Polysynth is a basic subtractive synthesizer. I shouldn't say basic though, there's quite a bit you can do. But I have 2 oscillators here. I have the ability to blend them in various ways. I have a multi-mode filter, a filter envelope generator, and an amplitude envelope generator. There are a couple things that I don't have directly in this instrument that I can easily add later, which would be some modulators, but we'll get to that a little later. Before I do anything fancy, I should create a basic melodic sequence. Hello. So I'm going to create another clip here, again, because I just want to do something really simple and then make this a bit more interesting. First off, let's just hear what this instrument sounds like on its own. Let me go back to the device panel. All right, so far we're just hearing oscillator 1. Oscillator 1 is a sawtooth, and that's it, all right? We have a low pass filter enabled. So these are just the default settings, very straightforward. We'll make this a lot more interesting. But starting from here, let's just say maybe I want to work in a specific key. I'll keep this very simple. I can choose a project key and scale up here. And C major, we could just keep all the white keys and go to A minor, but let's do this instead. Just to reduce complexity, we'll stay in C, but I want to use a minor pentatonic scale. All right. Okay. Now at this point, there are various devices I can use that will respect the project key and scale. But most importantly, let's say that I want to just play some stuff in. If I look at my note editor right now, I can see certain lanes are highlighted in blue because these reflect the notes that are actually in the scale that I've chosen. Maybe I want this to look a little bit different, or maybe I want my notes to snap to the key and scale. When you're looking in the editor, if you follow my mouse, hopefully, yep, cool. If we click down here, this square, there's a bunch of options for what you're seeing in the note editor, all right? And one of them that I'll show is we can change the background of the note editor to either just a regular piano pattern, white and black. Or if you do want to see the notes highlighted, then you can make this adapt to key, all right? Above this, it says snap to key. The shortcut for this is just the letter K. There's a lot of one-button shortcuts in Bitwig. Now, I can either press K or Instead of going into that menu, if you see this behind me? Okay. Anytime you see this icon, the flat sharp icon, this means that you can basically enable scale awareness. Let's call it that. At this point now, I'll go back to the spray can tool I was using before. And let's see, can I press 4 to bring that up? Yeah, 3 brings up that. My spray can tool is here. Okay. So at this point now, when I hover over any different note lanes, this will give me a preview of the note and where it's going to be placed. And you notice it doesn't hover the note over the black spaces. So if I just draw notes in, they're always going to snap to the scale at this point. Again, if I don't want this, I can press K, and now I can put the notes wherever I want. Beyond this, though, let's actually just draw in a pattern, okay? Let me play the drums. Turn that down a bit. As I make that hi-hat shorter, it's kind of annoying me, but it's all right. All right, I want to draw in a melodic sequence. I showed before that if I use the spray can and just click and hold, I can draw in notes that snap to the grid. If I hold Option and click and drag, I can draw a melodic sequence where the notes will then snap to the note lane that I drag them to, all right? So let's try this out. I'm gonna hold down Option, and I'm just gonna spray and pray. All right, let's play the clip. Okay. Realistically, I'd probably like to maybe drop this an octave, maybe make it more of a bass. So before I get into cool modulation, let's just talk quickly about some note effects. Bitwig has a lot of really creative note effects. I'm gonna go with something pretty simple, but again, I click here, and when I click in this area, this is where I can nest note effects inside of this instrument, all right? If I wanna save this as a custom preset, that's the easiest way to nest devices inside of my instrument is to click in these slots. So I think here what I like to do, let's grab a note transposer. Where's it at? Note transpose. What's nice about this, you can transpose in octaves or semitones, and this can also be aware of your project key and scale. All right, let's go down an octave, maybe 2. Okay. All right, now that we have this sound going, all right, it's a pretty basic sound, and I'd like to give it a bit more personality. When I look at this instrument, one thing that I don't see is I don't see an LFO. And when it comes to modulation, I love using LFOs, doing continuous modulation. And I'm hoping all of you realize I wouldn't show you this and say there's no LFO and just leave you hanging, right? So another massive Bitwig feature. This has been really part of the foundation of Bitwig from the very, very beginning, the use of modulators, all right? When you look at any device, whether it's a native Bitwig device or a third-party device, you will notice on the left side, there are some bigger squares here. And as usual, there's a plus button. So if I'm curious, I can just hit the plus. And this takes me to a whole slew of different modulators, all right? So it's not just a few LFOs. It's not just a couple envelopes. There's a ton of different modulators that work in some very cool and unique ways, all right? If I just need a basic LFO, then I have 3 different LFO. Well, technically I have 4, I guess really 5 LFOs to choose from. There's a classic LFO, this beat LFO, the more simply named LFO. But what I want to use is something that's, again, going to introduce some cool Bitwig uniqueness. I'm going to use this device called Curves. Curves is a modulator, and I'm going to use this probably maybe to modulate the filter frequency or something. I want to do something very rhythmic. But if I click on this, it's a cyclical modulator, but it has this weird shape. And if I click on this shape, I actually have the ability to draw any shape that I want. I can create any sort of interesting, weird cyclical modulation, right? I could have this do something like this. I can change how many segments there are. I don't have to have this snap to the grid if I don't want to. And the coolest thing about this is that this is actually something known as a BW curve, a Bitwig curve. I can save these file types, right, to the curve library, or I can load up curves. There's a whole slew of curves that can be used as modulation. And what I love doing is using the curves that are meant to be used more like sequences, all right? I want to do a rhythmic sequence on the filter, on the low pass filter, and I want to use one of these weird curves to help me accomplish that. So I'm going to go with something that is a filter rhythm, aptly named. Let's select that. Okay. I'll explain this as I talk through it, but I'll make sure the music's not too loud. All right, let me press play. All right, I want a decent amount of resonance. I want more resonance. Okay, that should be kind of cool. All right, so this is the goal. I want to use this modulator to modulate the filter frequency. The way that you assign a modulation source to a modulation target is pretty consistent. Here's my modulator. Now, before I do this, I actually want to change a couple things here. I want to make sure that this curves modulator is going to run in sync with my tempo. So let's enable sync. I want to make sure that the modulator is bipolar. I want to go above and below the current value of the filter. If I didn't want that, I could just toggle this button off. Many devices, a lot of them, in terms of the modulators, can be bipolar or unipolar. All right, I also want to make sure that this is going to be a lot longer. So we're going to make it so that we go through this, let's say, every 2 bars. Okay. I click this icon. Anytime I want to use a modulator to control something remotely, there's an icon here I can click. And this is also important too. So anything highlighted in blue, I can modulate in the instrument. But this also includes any effects that have been nested inside of the instrument. So this gives me another reason to maybe nest an effect in the instrument instead of adding it after. Because now I can use this same modulator to modulate not just the filter, but the fine tuning of I probably wouldn't do that, right? But maybe if I had a delay or a reverb or something, I could modulate how wet it is, as well as the filter frequency. All right. So let's just do this so it gets more interesting. Curves. I want to modulate the filter frequency. I click and hold, and I drag up or down by the amount it should be modulated. Now the thing is, this is a modulator, so it doesn't have complete control over this parameter. So I can adjust where the current value is. I go back to my modulator. Here's the depth, the amount of modulation. So maybe I'll reduce this a bit. And just to get a bit more out of this, if we look at the instrument, different blending modes, I'm going to use some amplitude modulation to blend oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 together. And I think this might introduce something interesting. Let's see. Maybe turn up sync on oscillator 2. And maybe introduce a bit of unison. There we go. All right, so we're getting somewhere. Again, I'm still not totally in love with these hi-hats over there, but I have some ideas. All right, I've got 2 clips. I have a bass line, I have some drums. What would be nice is to add a bit more variation, some complexity to these simple ideas. One thing I could do in terms of variation, eventually maybe I want to like extend this into something that's more of a song structure. Maybe I want to have a couple different variations of the drum beat. I keep talking about the hi-hats are kind of bugging me because they're a bit too long. Maybe I have a clip where the hi-hats are just out and I can go between those two, right? So let's talk about what we can do in terms of working with clips, creating clip aliases, and also working with automation. A new feature in Bitwig 6 is the ability to create clip aliases, which means that I could have a clip, multiple clips, all share the same content. If I edit one of the clip aliases, all the other clips will follow suit, all right? It's gonna be really useful, especially if you're working with loop-based content or section-based content. Maybe you've created a whole arrangement, but you made a change to the first chorus, and you wanna make sure every chorus has the same change, right? So I'll show you this in the clip launcher, and I might show this in the arranger too, but it works the same way. Let me duplicate this clip, Command D, and I'm just gonna move this over to a different scene just so it's very clear, all right? Now, right now, these are 2 independent clips. If I go to this clip here, and let's say I just delete the notes, the hi-hats here, they're gone, right? So one has hi-hats. This one doesn't. Okay, fine. Let's say that I also want another clip that is gonna have the hi-hats that plays a bit later, all right? I could either copy and paste this as an alias, or after I pasted this, I can say, you know what, this clip should be an alias, it should reference this one. So let me just make this really clear. I'm gonna change the color of this clip. so that we know this is not an alias. And if I right click on this, I have the option to, oh, it's not in here. Sorry, it's in the edit menu, actually. Here we go. I could copy this and paste this as an alias. I could hold Option, click, and drag, and before I let go, I can click a modifier to make it an alias. But what I prefer to do is this, because I think it's really straightforward. I'm just going to duplicate this. When I right-click on the clip now, I see an area that says pattern. So this refers to the different clips that are on this track. Each one's referred to as a different pattern, and if you don't rename them, it'll name it S and then whatever scene that it's in. All right. I changed the color, so I made it to make it more obvious that the one I want to reference as an alias is the orange one, this one here. All right. So I can select any clip here and just say, you know what, just share the same pattern. And now there's a little paper clip here showing that these are sharing the same content. If I change one of these, do something like this. All right. If I look in this clip, the same changes have been made. All right. Now, let's say that maybe, here we go. Let's duplicate this again. All right. Now I used duplicate. I didn't copy and paste this as an alias. So I see this one does not have a paper clip. All right. Let's say maybe in this one, I add these notes back. Oops. Let's go back up. Do this. Let me get rid of this crash here. Okay. The content in this clip is not the same as my aliases. All right. If I change the color of one of my aliases, all the aliases change color to show that they're the same. They're sharing the same content. I change the color of this clip. It stays independent because it's unique. All right. There's a lot of different ways you can take advantage of this, but if you want to make one of your aliases a standalone clip, once again, you can always just make it unique. If I right click, there's make unique. And now it's no longer an alias. It's its own thing, and I can edit it without worrying about other clips being affected. So this is a new feature in Bitwig 6. This can be really helpful for your workflow. Another thing that I want to show that I think will be a lot of fun, especially for this bass, is an automation clip. So let me get rid of these. And what I want to do instead, let's go here. Let me make this scene a bit wider. And my bass. And you know what I think would be cool? Yes, let's do this. All right. I'm going to add yet another note effect because I feel like what could be cool is if we, or maybe will this work with note transpose? Okay. I'm thinking what I'd like to do, see, this is what Bitwig makes me do, right? I think about, can I pull this off? And then I pull it off and then I feel satisfied. So I'm going to enable our global key signature. Let's call it that. Okay. And what I'm thinking could be cool is this. Maybe I can modulate the semitones, but make sure that we're not changing in semitones. We're changing in scale degrees. All right. You'll notice when I enable this, this parameter changes from semitones, so shift the pitch in semitones, to shift the pitch in scale degrees. If I modulate this, I can get some interesting changes, some interesting mode changes that will make this one bar clip a lot more interesting. Let's just try it. All right. In this case, I think what would make the most sense as a modulator would be something like steps, which is here. Let's expand this bad boy. All right. So what I'm thinking is this. I'm thinking in terms of 4 bars. So maybe every bar for 4 steps, I can send a different value to the steps degrees, and that could be fun, right? And if it doesn't work out, then, you know, whatever. I can always just undo it and try something new. That's the beauty of Bitwig. You're not penalized for exploration. You're encouraged to do it, all right? And as I mentioned before, the modulators, if I want this to be bipolar, I could enable it here. Not necessary for this parameter. Let's see where we end up. I'm going to click and hold, or not click and hold, just click my modulator. I want to modulate this parameter. Even though it's not a knob, it doesn't matter. If there's a value, I can use something else to modulate it. So maybe we'll make this a total of, it's a pentatonic scale, so 12 scale degrees seems agreed. I don't know. Let's do 7. Let's try 7. 7, 7. Okay. Now, if you're trying to reach an exact value, you can always go into the inspector panel here. And if you select a modulator or device, if you've assigned this to modulate something, all the targets show up here. You can change the exact value by typing. And even more, you can actually change the way the values the slope of the values, right? Whether the logarithmic, exponential, a lot of detail. Again, it's the Bitwig way. There's depth beneath the depth. You don't need to interact with all the depth, but there's a lot of complexity for those of you who are interested in that, all right? Okay, let's just keep this linear. Linear, there we go. I will assign this to modulate that. We did that already. All right, let's hear the result. This is going to be 4 steps. This is going to sync to the transport. I want to advance to the next step every bar. Okay. It might sound great. It might sound weird, but it'll sound different at least. So let's just see. Okay. I'm not upset about that. That's better. That's better. We're getting somewhere. Okay. Let's talk about automation, right? I just used some modulation. Let's talk about automation. Again, I'm in the clip launcher because I tend to work here when I'm just ideating on stuff. I don't usually start off with a set arrangement in mind, all right? So I want to do some automation on this bass to give it more life. When I'm looking at my different tracks, I can see there's a plus button here where I can add an automation lane, or I can actually toggle an automation lane to be consistently visible. If I click this, and now here is my flying automation lane, all right? I can see when I'm looking at this automation lane, I still see clips, and you might be wondering why, all right? I can use automation clips the same way I would use regular clips, which means that I can create a clip, I could stretch it, I could reverse it, I can do a lot of cool stuff. But the thing that's the most interesting to me about this is those same BW curves that I showed you before can be used as automation clips, all right? Again, anytime you see a plus, this will open up the pop-up browser to the appropriate place. And maybe I don't want to draw an automation clip. Maybe I'm feeling lazy, right? Inspire me, Bitwig. So I go in here, and what parameter do I want to mod? You know what I'm thinking would be cool? The individual notes are kind of long. Maybe I want to modulate the sustain time, or maybe I turn the sustain time down and modulate the decay time, something like that. Let me select the appropriate parameter. Which would be, what did I say? Oh, I said I wanted to play with decay. Let me reduce the sustain. There we go, okay. So I'm thinking something kind of like that could be interesting. All right, so decay is selected. I hit plus. What did I look at before? It was the hi-hat pattern, right? Let's just do hats, no? There it is, okay. So, as I was saying before, the BW curves can be used as automation clips. And since there's a lot of these and you can save your own, that's really cool, right? If I wanted to, I could use this shape. I could have loaded this and used this as an automation clip, all right? Right now, this is the same length as my clip. This is assigned to the decay time on Polysynth. Let's play the automation clip. Now, if you noticed, it played once and then it didn't play anymore, because it's a clip. I want this clip to continue looping. All right, let's play it again. All right. I think the low value is too low. So I want to edit this. Let's go back to my editor. And now I can do some fun things with some of these breakpoints and take advantage of some of these automation tools, all right? I think what I'd like to do is this. Let me just select all of this and use my time selection tool here. I'm gonna highlight all of this. I'm gonna use my pointer now. And I just want to bring all of this, wait a second. There we go. So I just want to raise the lower level a bit. Okay. Now, variation is a big theme in Bitwig. With this automation clip, I can see that there's breakpoints. And I can play with these breakpoints to make it so that the breakpoint value is not always the same every time the clip plays. So let me select one of these. I'll use my pointer tool. And let's say maybe this. I should point this out as well. If you notice too, this first breakpoint, there's no curve, it just goes straight forward. If I select this, I can look in the wonderful inspector panel. And these are parameters specifically about each individual breakpoint, which is kind of crazy, all right? This one doesn't connect to this breakpoint because this hold parameter is enabled. If I turn this off, now we have a nice slope, all right? Let's say I want to adjust the curve of the slope. I could do that in a normal way, just hover my mouse near this, hold Option, there we go, and I can adjust the slope like that. But if you look in the inspector panel, we also have curvature, right? I can easily adjust that right there. But what I meant to come in here to show you, let's say I don't want this to drop down to 34% all the time. I select this point, and there's spread. So again, this is another one of those wonderful Bitwig things. I want to make sure that every time we get to the end of this curve, that this is going to be a random value within a certain percentage of what it's currently set to. If I increase the spread, you'll see visually, right? This is a bar showing me basically the range of potential values that this breakpoint will hit. All right. Let's go ahead and select all of these. So using my time selection tool, I did Command A. This selects all my breakpoints. And just like we saw before, now I've got these little arrows where maybe I want to introduce a bit of chaos to these points so that we have the automation shape, but where it lands will be different every time. All right. So you can see that variation happening every time it loops. It's pretty cool. And again, just to really reinforce this, it's a clip. At the top of Bitwig, I haven't even mentioned this yet. If you're new to Bitwig, another big thing that I think is really helpful is the fact that you have a toolbar up here, and you can pin certain things to this toolbar that you use a lot, all right? And again, this is all context sensitive. I select a track, and then I see I have a menu for track. And these are specific things I can do with the track. I select a clip. There's a menu for clips. And I am in the clip menu a lot. So I've been able to pin specific things that I use a lot. So I don't have to go into the clip menu when I select a clip. Things I love to do with clips, I often double the content. I might scale it 200%. So a 1-bar clip becomes 2 bars, right? Or maybe something that was 100 BPM becomes stretched to be half the speed. In this case, I just want to point out the fact that an automation clip is still a clip. I click on clip, here's the clip menu, here's all my clip features. Maybe I want to reverse the automation clip. I can do it, it's a clip, all right? And then you can see the values there. It's nice, it's fun. All right, so these are a number of Bitwig features that when used together add a lot of possibilities. And I'm just barely scratching the surface, okay? But one more thing I should point out, because again, if this is a new thing to you, I love how Bitwig encourages you to learn. If I select a device and I look in the inspector panel, the first thing I'll see is a button that says show help. All right, let's go to the Polysynth, because there's a lot of stuff here that may not be that obvious to everybody. I select Polysynth. Maybe I want to learn about this instrument, but I want to learn about it as I'm making my project. I don't want to read a manual and then suddenly turn off my creative brain to read something, okay? So let's play this. All right, cool. Polysynth is here. What can I learn about this instrument? Well, let me go to show help. Okay, so this is an interactive help view. This works with every single native Bitwig device. But most importantly, this is the actual instrument in my project. This isn't like a screenshot. If I play with this, my sub-os, let's change the wave shape. All right, so I can hear this in real time. Let's go to my envelope section. That's being automated. I guess let's increase the sustain level. That's a bit more effective, all right? But to me, this is amazing. I teach people all the time. I've been an educator, a music educator for nearly 20 years now, right? I've never had a tool like this where someone's asking me something and I'm like, you know what, just go to show help and just play with this and get a feel for what's happening. If you don't understand, you can read what that knob does as you turn the knob and, you know, make a mental connection, right? It's a beautiful thing. For people who are just into being creative and having fun, again, Bitwig does a great job of encouraging you to explore without penalizing you, right? Every step of the way, there's something that's going to show you what's going on, but just go ahead and twist some knobs and see where you end up. Okay. So, just wanted to point that out. And I guess while we're here, how much time do we have? Okay. All right, let me show a couple more things. If you are new to Bitwig, one thing that is very, I don't know, an eye-opening, paradigm-shifting thing, especially if you're curious about Eurorack stuff, but don't have thousands of dollars to burn, there are some devices here. And I say that as someone who's burned thousands of dollars on Eurorack gear myself. I've got some stuff I'll show tomorrow if you come to that workshop. There are 3 different grid devices that are basically a modular environment within Bitwig. And this is where I spend a lot of my time personally, all right? There's a device called Polygrid. This is meant for making instruments, synthesizers, sample-based instruments. Let me add this first. If I go to the effects area, this is for audio effects. There is an effects grid device that you can create audio effects with, your own custom effects. I'm just gonna load that there so you see it. There's also a note grid, which is here, and you can create custom note effects. Now, let me go to Polygrid. I won't go too deep with this today, because this is meant to be more of an introductory thing, all right? So I'll frame this a few different ways. As I said, I'm a longtime educator, but I've been a creative and electronic musician for much longer than that, all right? When I'm trying to teach people certain synthesis concepts or signal flow concepts, this is a great visual aid. But in terms of me as a creator, this is a sandbox. I can make whatever I want. And like I said, you're not penalized for making connections that may not necessarily make sense. So let me kind of explain what I mean. I'm going to solo this. So I'm going to bring up my mixer subpanel. I'll just press M. I want to make sure, I don't want to hear that right now. I just want to hear this. And I'll press M again to get rid of that. Okay. The default setting, this is set up to be a synthesizer. So I have this union oscillator. Let's turn this up. There we go. So this oscillator is one of many oscillators. If I click up here, I can see a bunch of different oscillators I could swap this with. I could pair this with other oscillators. I'll build something really quickly just so you can see how this works, but let me just explain the flow. So my oscillator generates the sound. This is passing through an envelope. For those of you who are familiar with Eurorack's gear and modular synthesis, just to be clear, this is basically an envelope generator and a VCA in one. All right, so the audio goes into this. As I play a note, this envelope is automatically triggered by any MIDI notes that I send to it because some of these modules use what are called pre-chords, right? There's already connections that are established. If I didn't know what a pre-chord was, I could say, what is he talking about? And then I could select the module and say, show help. And then I can see where's gates on notes, pre-chord, right? Connects the device's note, gate signals to gate in. It makes it a lot more playable without you trying to figure out how do I get some sound. Okay, what if I want to make this a bit more complex? The instrument that I was using, Polysynth, has 2 oscillators that I can blend together. It's a good framework to start with. Let me challenge myself, all right? I think I want to replace this oscillator with something a bit fancier. I could drag and drop something from the top, or I could just right-click on this and replace it with an appropriate device, all right? Just to be clear, if you're into sample-based stuff, you can also load a sampler module in here as well. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to load scrawl because scrawl lets me draw my own fancy oscillator if I want to, right? Let's do something weird. Let's see what that's like. Okay. Is this going to sound good? It sounds okay. Let's blend this with something else. There's a very cool, what is it, Swarm? I like Swarm a lot. So I'm going to just drag this into here. Okay. When you're looking in the grid, it's helpful to understand that there's a color scheme here that allows you to think a bit more logically about the connections. If I see red, that generally means audio. If I see yellow, that typically means a gate or a trigger, okay? Like I said, for this envelope, this needs to be triggered. The yellow input is for gates or triggers. The yellow pre-chord means it's already receiving gates and triggers from my MIDI controller. Purple is usually for phase, which can be kind of a hard concept for people to grasp, but basically you have continuous signals that continuously cycle, right? An oscillator continuously oscillates. At what point in the phase should we start? Okay. And then orange is typically for pitch. So just pointing that out. I want to take these two oscillators and blend them together to make something unique. I'll go into my mix category here, and here we have blend. Okay. Now, what's nice, I can drop this here and then remake the connections, or I can simply insert this into the signal path, and then it'll make the appropriate connection already. All right, so if I hold this down, we'll connect swarm to input 2. There we go. With these two different oscillators now, I can change the frequency ratio. That's what this is here. We can change this in semitones, and we can also do some stereo detuning. The oscillator also has a bipolar button, and then I can adjust the frequency. If I adjust this, it'll go up on one side and down on the other. So this is a great way to introduce some kind of fake unison. I guess it's not fake, it's real unison. And let's make this more of a sub-oscillator. And let's blend it more like that. All right, that wasn't my best work, but I blame my launch pads. All right. Okay, let's keep going. I'm not gonna go too crazy with this, but I'm just showing you what's possible, all right? Generally, I probably wanna pass these through a filter of some sort. Let's go to the filter. Now, I can make this whatever I want. I could have these each go into their own independent filter. I could have each one go into a filter that's fed into a secondary filter. They could be parallel, they could be in series. Whatever my mind comes up with, I can basically do, all right? But like I said, we'll keep this basic. Lots of different filter types. There's a very cool valve filter. You know what, let's do the valve filter. I said I was gonna keep this simple and I lied, all right. All right, maybe I want my synth to talk a little bit. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I want to create some sort of rhythmic pattern, rhythmic and pitch-based pattern in here so I don't have to keep playing with my launch pad. We can generate not just audio, not just control and modulation signals, but we can also generate gates, probabilities, slopes. So all this can happen within the grid. If you wanted to, you don't even have to touch the arranger or the clip launcher. You could just work exclusively in the grid, or vice versa, or any combination, all right? It's a super flexible DAW, and because of that, I'm continuously inspired using it, all right? But let me continue and then I'll finish, all right? So what I wanna do, I wanna generate some gates to trigger my envelope. I might want to generate some pitches so that these aren't always playing just the same note, and maybe just let this run and use that as the basis of what can be a generative patch. My gates module, these can either output gates that basically last the length of a step, or we can change these so that they just output a trigger, just a little blip, right, to trigger my envelope. And I think I'm gonna do this, bless you. The step count, all right? So the idea of phase, and hopefully I'm not going too far here, but phase is a pretty important concept in Bitwig. How long does it take for me to go through however many steps are in this module? When I click in the background of a grid device, the inspector panel shows me the grid, the entire grid's parameters. And one of them is the device phase. So if I look, purple usually represents phase. And this little line, the circle with a line through it, means that this is already receiving phase from the grid. So this is already running, right? I don't need to connect something to the input. If I turn this off, however, now I would need to connect something to the phase input to make this run. I would basically need to send this some sort of clock signal, some sort of phase signal. Let me turn this back on. All right, so just pointing out, this will be a 1-bar pattern. I'm gonna make this have more steps. Let's make this have, let's say, 16 steps. And mute when stopped. So right now, this is going to generate triggers even though Bitwig is not running. If I don't want it to do that, I can hit mute when stopped so that when I stop my transport, this isn't just continuously running in the background. All right, let me connect the output of my gate module to the input of my envelope. And if I press play, okay, I'm not playing any notes. Look, Ma, no hands. But we're not changing pitch because I'm only sending notes to my envelope, or I'm only sending trigs to my envelope. Okay, let's do something more like this. All right, so in addition to this, I'd like to also maybe change the pitch of what's happening with my oscillators. How can I do that? If we look in this data category, there is a pitches module, which can be used to do exactly that. So let's drop this in here. And how much more time we got? Okay, cool. So I'll do this really quickly, and this will be a good place to wrap up. All right. So just showing you a lot of different areas in Bitwig that give you tons of creative control, a lot of different flexibility. And again, I do this as someone who doesn't work for Bitwig. I've been a big friend of the company for many, many years because I genuinely like the program. Like I don't need to be here like trying to sell you guys on it. I'd use it a lot. I love it. There's stuff in here that I just can't do in other programs. And it allows me to be so much more creative so my workflow doesn't get stuck in this stagnant pattern, which I think is really the bigger thing. All right. But alas, I digress. Okay, let's do this. We got 16 steps there. I'll do 16 steps here as well. The fly really likes Bitwig as well. Okay, let's do that. Let's do this. So again, pitch. If I know the color scheme, I can follow the color scheme. This is going to generate pitches. It's going to follow my device clock. But the pitches aren't changing. The reason why is the input. This is a knob determining the depth of the modulation. This is essentially a pitch modulator. How much should it modulate the pitch? I'm just going to crank this. No, come in, join us. Or close the door. Okay. All right, so that's happening. That's cool. All right, let's do this. Nice. Okay, last thing. We just talked about key and scale. This is generating a bunch of pitches, but they're not necessarily in the key of my project. And maybe I want to fix that somehow. If I look in the pitch category, we have pitch quantize. And we also have, where is it at? Scale steps, if I wanted to transpose it. And yeah, I guess let's just do pitch quantize. So let me move this stuff off to the side. Here we go. And again, I'm going to insert this into the signal path here. And then I can say specifically, only use these notes. All right. And then if I wanted to transpose this based on scale steps, then I could bring this in, drop in there. There we go. All right. All right, so I can make this very musical. There's so much more I could do, but hopefully you're just starting to see how wide open and flexible the DAW is. All right. So whether you keep it simple and you stick with using clips and a traditional clip launcher, maybe you're more interested in working in a typical arrangement. Actually, let me get to the right track. I'm trying to do my summary and I'm not even in the right place. Here we go. Let's go ahead and hide this. Go over there. There we go. If you're more interested in working with a typical linear arranger, that's always there for you. All right. But there's just so many creative possibilities. And that's why I'm here and excited to talk to you about the program. So hopefully you've all learned something new. And if you haven't played with Bitwig, I encourage you to get your hands dirty and just explore. See if you get inspired. You'll probably want to come back. That's what happened to me. So that's it. So I don't know if there's any questions or if anyone has I don't want to stop you from applauding, but I figure it's appropriate.